I'm pregnant. I want to build a family with a good man like you. My girlfriend sobbed, while funneling my money to another man the whole time. Her engagement party was about to become her worst nightmare. So here's some background so you guys can understand this situation. My girlfriend Sophie and I have been together for 3 years, living together for the last year and a half. She's an elementary school teacher, super sweet with kids, and I'm an auditor at a construction company. Everything seemed normal until last month. I just got promoted to senior auditor with a significant raise. We're talking about 40% salary bump. I was excited to tell Sophie when I got home. I walked in around 6 p.m., expecting a normal evening. Sophie was in the kitchen making dinner, seemed quiet, but I figured she'd had a long day with the kids at school. I started telling her about my day, building up to the big news. "So remember that position I interviewed for last month?" I said. She looked up from chopping vegetables and nodded. "Well, they called me into HR today and..." That's when she dropped the knife, turned around, and just started sobbing. I thought she was crying because she was happy for me, but then she said, "Caleb, I need to tell you something. I'm pregnant." Now, I'm not against having kids eventually, but the timing felt weird. We've been careful about protection, and Sophie has always been adamant about not wanting kids until we're married and financially stable. She's on the pill and we use condoms most of the time. But here she is, sobbing about being pregnant and how scared she is. She kept saying things like, "I know this isn't what we planned, but I trust you completely, and I want to build a real family with a good man like you." It felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced what to say, but she was crying real tears, so maybe I'm overthinking. What really got me was her immediate shift to talking about moving to a bigger place, getting married before the baby comes, and how we'll need to combine our finances properly now. She mentioned my promotion without me telling her about it. I guess I must have mentioned interviewing for it before, but I don't remember telling her the results. The timeline doesn't add up in my head. She says she's 8 weeks along, which would put conception right around when I started interviewing for this position. We hadn't been intimate much during that time because I was stressed about work, maybe once or twice in the past 2 months. As an auditor, I'm trained to spot patterns and inconsistencies. When numbers don't add up at work, there's usually fraud involved. My professional brain is starting to kick in here, even though I don't want it to. The same red flags I see in financial statements are showing up in Sophie's story. "Sophie," I said carefully, "this is a lot to take in. I need some time to process everything." Her face immediately changed. The tears stopped and her expression hardened. "Process what exactly? Are you saying you don't want this baby?" "I'm not saying that. I'm saying I need time to think about everything. It's a big life shift." "A big life shift," her voice got louder. "Caleb, I'm pregnant. I'm scared out of my mind, and the first thing you say is that you need time to process it. I thought you'd be happy. I thought you cared about me." That hit me in the gut. "Of course I care about you, but you have to understand, I don't have to do anything," she snapped, cutting me off. She was crying again, but it felt different this time, more performative. "I'm carrying your child, Caleb. I'm terrified about what this means for my career, for my body, for my life, and instead of supporting me, you're telling you need time." The guilt hit me immediately. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the timing really was just coincidental, but something in my gut kept nagging at me. I know, and I understand that you're scared. But I'm scared too, and I need tonight to wrap my head around this." "Fine." She grabbed her purse and jacket. "I'll go stay at Jessica's. Maybe when you're done processing, you'll remember that I'm the woman you supposedly love, not some fraud case from your work." "Sophie, don't leave. Let's talk about this." "No, I'm already scared enough about being a mom without you making me feel like a criminal for getting pregnant." She paused at the door. "When you decide whether you want to be part of this family or not, let me know." The door slammed behind her and I sat there feeling like the biggest asshole in the world. But underneath the guilt, that auditor voice in my head kept whispering, "Something doesn't add up." Despite how the conversation ended, she's been sending me apartment listings for places that cost twice our current rent, talking about wedding venues, and showing me baby stuff online. She keeps saying things like, Our baby deserves the best start in life. And I know you'll step up because you're not like other guys. Here's what's really bothering me. Sophie has always been super independent with money. She's never wanted to merge finances, always insisted on splitting everything 50-50. Now suddenly she's talking about joint accounts and how I should handle the big financial decisions since you're better with numbers. The shift in her behavior is dramatic. Before the pregnancy announcement, she would split a $12 coffee bill down to the penny. Now she's talking about me taking on a $2,800 month apartment and saying money shouldn't matter when it comes to our family's future. Am I being paranoid? The timing just feels too convenient. My gut is telling me something's wrong, but I don't want to be that guy who doesn't trust his pregnant girlfriend. She seems genuinely emotional about it all. What would you do? Am I overthinking this, or should I trust my instincts? Update 1. Posted 2 weeks ago. So after spending 2 days feeling like shit about our fight, I called Sophie to apologize. I felt terrible about making a pregnant woman feel unsupported, and I figured my work paranoia was making me see problems where there weren't any. When I called, she was crying again. I've been so scared, Caleb. I kept thinking about what you said and wondering if you even want this baby. I can't do this alone. The guilt was eating me alive. I told her to come home so we could talk properly. But then Sophie moved back in and immediately started acting like we were already married. She began making decisions about our future without consulting me, picking out baby cribs, calling venues, even telling her principal she'd need extended maternity leave. When I asked her about timelines, she got vague and said we'd figure it out as we go. My auditor instinct started screaming for a reason again. But what really triggered my professional paranoia was when she casually mentioned we should open a joint savings account for the baby. She suggested I transfer my entire emergency fund, about $12,000, into this new account since you're so much better with finances than me. That's exactly how embezzlement starts at work. Create shared access, then gradually move money around. I started checking our shared expenses more carefully. Sophie has always been meticulous about receipts and splitting costs, but lately she's been vague about money. When I asked to see bank statements for planning purposes, she got defensive and said I was acting controlling and untrusting during an already stressful time. The defensiveness was a huge red flag. Here's where my audit training paid off. I have access to our utility accounts online since they're in my name. I noticed Sophie has been getting more mail than usual, so I started paying attention to return addresses. Most were normal, doctor's office, insurance, stuff like that. But there were several money transfer receipts from Western Union. I couldn't shake the feeling something was off, so I did something I'm not proud of. When Sophie was at work, I went through the trash and found crumpled Western Union receipts. Over the past 6 weeks, she's been sending $300 to $500 weekly to someone named Martin Reyes. The amounts were consistent, always between $300 to $500, always on Tuesdays or Wednesdays when I was at work late. That kind of pattern isn't coincidental. I know that name. Martin is Sophie's ex-boyfriend from college. They dated for 2 years before she met me. Sophie told me he was a failed musician who was immature and couldn't hold down a real job. She said they broke up because he was going nowhere in life, and she wanted someone stable and responsible. Why the heck is my pregnant girlfriend sending her ex-boyfriend hundreds of dollars every week? I confronted Sophie that evening. I put the receipts on the kitchen table and asked her to explain. She immediately started crying and saying I was violating her privacy and going through her things like some psycho boyfriend. When I pressed her about Martin, her story kept changing. First, she said he was having financial trouble and she was just helping an old friend. Then she said he owed money to dangerous people and she was scared for his safety. Finally, she admitted they'd been talking occasionally and that he'd been asking for money. I asked her why she didn't tell me about sending money to her ex. She said she knew I'd be jealous and wouldn't understand. She kept saying, "It doesn't mean anything, and you're the one I'm having a baby with." Then I asked the obvious question, when exactly did you and Martin last talk? The look on her face told me everything. She started stuttering about how they'd been in touch here and there over the past few months. When I asked if they'd seen each other, she said maybe once or twice, but it was just as friends. Here's the thing that really messed me up. She said Martin had been having a hard time and reached out to her around the same time she found out about my promotion opportunity. The timeline was too perfect to be coincidental. I told Sophie I needed space to think, and she completely lost it. Started screaming about how I was abandoning her when she needed me most, how she was carrying our child, and I was acting like she cheated on me. She kept saying things like, "This is exactly what I was afraid of, and I knew you'd find a reason to leave me." She's been staying at her friend's place again. I've been documenting everything like I would with a financial fraud case at work. I'm also going through old phone bills to see how long she's been talking to Martin. Reddit, I think I'm being played. The pregnancy announcement right after my promotion, the immediate talk about combining finances, the secret money transfers to her ex, it's all too convenient. I'm scared that this kid might not be mine. But I'm more scared that if it is mine, I'm tied to someone who's been manipulating me from day one. What should I do? Should I tell her I want a paternity test after the baby's born? Edit. A lot of you are suggesting I get a lawyer involved. One of my close friends, Diane, is a civil attorney. I'm going to talk to her tomorrow. For those asking about paternity testing during pregnancy, it's possible but expensive and requires the mother's consent. I'll wait until after birth for definitive proof. Someone DM'd me saying they might know Martin's family, looking into it carefully. Update 2. Posted 1 week ago, you guys. I can't believe how deep this goes. I talked to Diane, my lawyer friend, and she helped me understand just how messed up this situation really is. But thanks to an unexpected ally, I now know exactly what's been happening. First, let me tell you about my conversation with Diane. She told me to approach this like any other fraud investigation, document everything, establish patterns, and build an airtight case before confronting anyone. "What do you want from this situation?" she asked while we sat in her office. "Get your money back, or just make sure everyone knows the truth." I sat quietly for a moment. "I don't really care about the money," I said. "I just want Sophie to know that I know everything and that I'm not the fool she thinks I am." Diane nodded. "Then we document everything first. No confrontation until you have undeniable proof. In my experience, people like Sophie will deny everything until they can't anymore." That's when I got contacted by Alina, Martin's sister. Turns out someone had forwarded my story to her, and she reached out because she was disgusted by what her brother was doing. Alina was hesitant when I first talked to her. "Look, Martin screwed me over for $3,000 last year," she said. "I don't want to get involved, but I can't let him hurt someone else like this. He promised to pay me back with money from his new opportunity. I think that might be you." She couldn't give me direct evidence, but she told me what she'd overheard and observed. 2 days ago, I heard Martin on the phone bragging to someone about how his plan was working perfectly, that he just needed a few more weeks, and he'd be set financially for at least a year. Alina also mentioned that Sophie had been coming by her apartment building regularly, not to see Alina, but meeting Martin in the parking lot. I've seen them together at least 4 or 5 times in the past month. They're definitely not just talking. I saw them kissing last week. My stomach dropped when she said that. 3 years with Sophie, and she's been playing me the entire time. Armed with this information, I spent the past few weeks methodically building my case. I've been tracking Sophie's location patterns through social media. She always turns off location sharing when she's shopping, and her Instagram check-ins have been suspiciously vague. When she says she's at Target, the timestamp shows she's actually across town. I documented every conversation about money and the baby, started recording them on my phone. I calculated exactly how much money she's transferred to Martin and how much I've spent on pregnancy-related expenses, over $14,000 total. Diane helped me understand that what Sophie's doing could be considered fraud, especially the financial manipulation. The most damning evidence came from Sophie herself. I started recording our conversations, legal in my state with one-party consent. Sophie has no idea I know anything, so she's been getting more confident and demanding. Yesterday she showed me a lease for a new apartment that costs $2,800 a month and said she already put down a deposit using money from her savings. She wants me to casa in and pay the rent since I'm the one with stable income. But here's the kicker. Sophie told me she wants to have a small engagement party before we sign the lease. She's been planning it without asking me, already sent invites. She said it's important to show everyone we're committed to our family. I've agreed to everything. I even told her I'd transfer money for the apartment deposit and that I was excited about the engagement party. The lies come so easily to her now, it's terrifying how good she's become at manipulation. Here's my plan, and Diane thinks it's perfect. I'm going to let Sophie throw her engagement party. I've secretly asked Alina to come as a +1 for one of my friends. During the party, in front of all our friends and family, I'm going to present all the evidence of Sophie's financial fraud and her ongoing relationship with Martin. Alina is going to bring Martin to the party under the pretense that he might meet potential music contacts. I want both of them there when everything comes out. Instead of a paternity test, which isn't practical right now, I'm going to present the timeline evidence. In the 8-week conception window, Sophie and I were intimate exactly once, but she met Martin at least 6 times based on Alina's observations and my own tracking. Diane has prepared a demand letter for Sophie to repay all the money she's taken from me. If she doesn't pay, we're filing civil charges for fraud. The engagement party is this Saturday. I'm nervous as hell, but I'm done being played for a fool. Diane will be there too, both as support and as a witness to everything that happens. When the baby is born, we'll get the definitive paternity test. But honestly, I already know the answer. Wish me luck, Reddit. Time to flip the script on these manipulative assholes. Edit. Alina confirmed Martin will be there. Sophie has no idea Alina is his sister. This is going to be epic. Several people are asking me to record the party. Diane says it's legal as long as I'm present and it's in my own home. I'll definitely be documenting everything. For those asking about my mental state, Diane has been helping me process this. Having a friend who's also a lawyer has been invaluable. I feel more clear-headed than I have in months. Someone asked what happens if Sophie runs. Diane says the demand letter establishes a paper trail for any future legal action. We're covered. Final update. Posted 3 days ago, the saga has reached its conclusion, and it exceeded every expectation. Thanks to everyone who followed this journey, your support kept me sane through the whole thing. Saturday night was the engagement party. Sophie had invited about 30 people, her friends, co-workers, some family, and a few of my friends and colleagues. She spent the whole week leading up to it acting like the perfect devoted girlfriend, talking about our future and how excited she was to officially start our life together. I played my part perfectly. Brought flowers, helped set up, even gave a little speech about how lucky I was to have found someone so honest and caring. Sophie was glowing, thinking she'd pulled off the perfect con. Alina arrived right on time with Martin in tow. She told him she was bringing him to a party where he might meet potential music contacts. Sophie nearly choked on her drink when she saw Martin walk in, but she couldn't make a scene without raising questions. About halfway through the party, I asked everyone to gather in the living room for a special announcement. Sophie was beaming, thinking I was about to propose for real. Instead, I pulled out a folder of documents. Before we celebrate our engagement, I said, I think everyone should know what kind of family we're really building. I started with the financial evidence. I showed everyone the Western Union receipts, the timeline of money transfers, and Sophie's sudden change in behavior regarding finances. In the past 6 weeks, Sophie has transferred over $2,500 to her ex-boyfriend Martin while telling me she needed money for our baby. The room went silent. Sophie's face went white. She started saying the receipts were fake or taken out of context, but I had copies of everything organized chronologically. Then I presented the timeline evidence. Sophie claims to be 8 weeks pregnant. In that conception window, we were intimate exactly once. But according to multiple witnesses, she met with Martin at least 6 times during the same period. Alina stepped forward and introduced herself to everyone. "I'm Martin's sister," she said. "I've watched him manipulate people for years. 3 days ago, I heard him bragging on the phone about how this plan was working perfectly and he'd be financially set for a year. Martin tried to leave, but my friend Jake, who's built like a linebacker, suggested he might want to stay and explain himself. That's when Sophie completely lost it. She started screaming at Alina, calling her a liar and a jealous bitch. She turned to me and said I was throwing away our family and that I'd never forgive myself for destroying our child's future. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Sophie, there is no our child until we know the truth. There's no our future. There's just a woman who tried to steal my life and a deadbeat who thought he could live off my hard work." Martin tried to defend himself, saying he and Sophie were in love and that I was just a convenience. That's when Jake suggested Martin might want to leave before things got physical. The party ended with Sophie's own mother apologizing to me and saying she was ashamed of her daughter. Sophie's principal was there and looked absolutely horrified. She told Sophie they'd be discussing her future at the school on Monday morning. Sophie tried to stay and work things out, but I handed her Diane's demand letter for $14,000 and told her she had 30 days to pay up or face legal action. She crumpled it up and threw it at me, screaming that I'd ruined everything. Alina kicked Martin out of her apartment that night. Last I heard, he's sleeping in his car. Sophie's world completely fell apart after that night. Her school placed her on administrative leave pending an investigation into her moral fitness as an educator. Turns out when your principal watches you get exposed for financial fraud and paternity scams at a public party, it raises some serious questions about your character. Within a week, she had to move back in with her parents. Imagine being in your 30s, pregnant, unemployed, and having to explain to your mom and dad why you're sleeping in your childhood bedroom again. Karma's a bitch. Martin fared even worse. Alina kicked him out that same night, and apparently word spread quickly through his music career friends about what happened. Nobody wants to associate with someone who manipulates pregnant women for rent money. Last I heard from Alina, he's been sleeping in his car and trying to crash at different places, but people keep turning him away. As for me, I managed to get my apartment deposit back and kept my original lease. Having Diane handle the legal side has been a godsend. She's moving forward with civil action to recover the $14,000 Sophie owes me. Diane seems confident we'll get most of it back. I'm doing better than I have in months. I realized how much Sophie had been draining me emotionally and financially. Diane and I have been spending more time together lately. She's been helping me process everything and showing me what honest communication actually looks like. We're taking things slow, but there's definitely something there that feels real. The crazy thing is, I'm grateful this happened now rather than after marriage and years of being trapped in Sophie's manipulation. I learned to trust my instincts, use my professional skills to protect myself, and never let anyone make me feel crazy for questioning obvious red flags. Thanks again, Reddit. You helped me save my life and my sanity. Edit. For those asking about the legal stuff, Diane says we have a strong case for civil recovery. Sophie hasn't responded to the demand letter yet, but she has 25 days left.